Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Mob Psycho 100 Season 1, Episode 11. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So we immediately pick up with Regan showing up at the facility. In fact, we see him in a cab drive there, which the cab driver is a little nervous because I guess maybe he knows what's out there. He knows that the Claw 7th Division facility is out there. And so he's like, oh, if you're coming out here, you must have a reason. Or maybe Regan just gave off some aura because he's in a foul mood trying to be like, yo, where is Mob? And why is he all the way out here? And I was like, wait. So my whole theory last episode, I was like, oh my God, is he actually a bad guy? I went in this whole diatribe about it. And it's like, nope. Regan did what Regan does. He fakes it till he makes it. So it's like he's really convincing and very good at just making you believe his BS. Well, to some extent. Because most people, at least, you know, a lot of characters are smart enough to see him for the fraud that he is, except some aren't. But either way, he shows up and he's just, you know, I mean, that's what a con man is. A confidence. You know, it's all about selling confidence. And he just shows up. And they just assume that he's their boss. Like, initially, like, whoa, who are you stepping to this property? Like, we don't know you. And then they're like, oh my God, he's gotten a subordinate that works here. But the top dog is Ishiguro, the boss. Oh my God, it must be the boss's boss. Oh my God, you're the guy. I thought you weren't going to show up here. So they just let him in. And so he ends up coming across the children who got kidnapped, who got captured again. And they convince him like, oh my God, they held us here. And he was like, whoa, you guys are capturing children? And they're like, yeah, but it's for our greater goal. And for him, it's like, I get the thing of wanting to do whatever it takes to get up on top. He's like, I get that. But if you have to do whatever it takes to get on top, when you look back down, all you'll see is the wreckage you left on your way to get to the top, and that's no way to live life. Once again, Regan is so full of BS, but at the same time, he can give good advice. He has a good perspective on things, which is so, once again, so ironic that he can be such a con man himself, but also give great advice. So, in fact, you can tell that it spoke volumes to these lackeys. They're almost like, oh, right. I guess it is kind of messed up, although we've been doing some pretty petty stuff. I mean, yeah, it is kind of pretty messed up. You're torturing and kidnapping kids. Like, it shouldn't have taken Regan for you to recognize how effed up that is, but, you know, I guess sooner rather than, better later than never, I guess, you know? So the kids are able to ultimately escape because of Regan, and he ends up getting taken to Mob and them. Which, really quickly, there was a flashback where Mob was thinking about one time him and Risu were lost in the woods, but then Risu was like, oh, you know, the whole thing of, okay, moss grows on the north side of the tree and it points where the north is, so he led them away, and that's the moment just kind of like showcasing Mob, like how much he admires his brother. And the moment he wakes up and sees that Risu is okay, he goes over and hugs Risu, because Risu saw his brother awake and was kind of happy, but he kind of felt like stepped backwards, because he's like, for one, this is all my fault. You're only here because of me. You came to rescue me, but it's also only started because of my inferiority complex. I cannot say that word sometimes. Inferiority complex and his own issues when it came to Mob. And it's like, yeah, I was trying to fight you. I was doing all this and that, and you fought tooth and nail like against Koyama to save me a couple episodes back. And now, even now, you've came to this facility. You even got hurt trying to help me. So he felt bad, and he's like, but like Mob comes over and hugs him, and it's like, it's okay. It's like, as long as you're okay, that's all that matters. And he's gassing up Risu. It's like, no, we'll find a way out of here, because Risu's so smart. My brother's so incredible. And it's just like, man, like Mob is just a good kid. And just Risu just feeling so bad, because it's like, you're not even giving me a chance to apologize. But it's like, no, we'll find a way out of here, because apparently Sakurai made it. It's a room where their psychic powers are muted, so they can't get out. So Risu's just suggesting like they bide their time until whoever shows up, and then they kind of strike and bust out of here. But it's actually Regan that shows up, being like, yo, Mob, why are you here? And at first I was thinking like, oh, because like I said, my entire thought last episode was like, oh my God, is Regan the head of Claw? And it's like, no, it was all BS, completely. I mean, they kind of intentionally lead you to believe that, but I took that couple seconds at the end of the episode, and a tiny bit of the preview we got, and I ran with it. So once again, I was completely off the mark, but I was kind of worried, like, ooh, is Mob going to think like, you know, Regan is all of this? But it didn't even cross his mind at once, because he's just like, oh, Master, why are you here? Because he knows, like, right, my Master's a good guy. There's no way he'd be a part of something like this. And I love that it was like either Tsuruki or Ritsu that was like immediately picked up on it. It's like, oh my god, he fooled all these people. So he's leaving with the kids, and they get stopped by Ishiguro, as well as the last 3 standing scars that are at least here, and they reveal, like, no, this guy isn't the boss, and he proceeds to attack, but luckily Tsuruki puts up a barrier to block him. So, but it turns out Ishiguro's power is gravity, which is ooh, that was like, oh, that's a neat ability. I'm sure it comes up, but it's like I've not watched a lot of stuff with people with gravity abilities. I think it's so interesting being able to control gravity. Only person that comes off the top of my head is the Emperor from the Trail series. I know he had he had an artifact that allowed him to control gravity, but still, it was like a special item that let him control gravity. It wasn't like a natural power. But like, Mob steps up to fight, and ultimately, because he's like, whoa, did you actually use your power? Your powers aren't supposed to be used against a person. But Risu's like, if he didn't do it, he did it to protect me. And Regan's like, okay, so you must have been conflicted, and it must have been a struggle for you to have to do that. And that's why I think it's so interesting, because the entire time you're like, is really the right time for you to be saying all this stuff, Regan? Like, why are you trying to get Mob not to fight at all? That's what I'm so confused by, because both Risu and Tsuruki are like, no, he needs to go all out. It's the only way we're going to survive. We can barely hold up against these people. But Regan kept being the one that's like, no, don't. Because now I'm wondering, has Regan ever seen that other side of Mob like Tsuruki has, as well as Ritsu? Where it's like, at least we know definitively Tsuruki did, but I can only assume, because we never fully saw what happened when Risu got beat up by those kids, and then Mob blacked out and woke up and everything was resolved. But like, when the fight with Tsuruki happened and he saw the news coverage footage and he saw the building, he knew immediately. It was like, oh, this is Mob's work. This is Shigio's power. So it's like, you can only assume what happened during the fight with Tsuruki happened back then as well. Maybe not. But I wonder, has Regan's seen that, and that's why he's reluctant to have Mob ever fight? Because it's like, you think under these, but maybe it's also because, like, I think, once again, it might have more to do with Regan than it does Mob. Because maybe it's a thing of, he sees how important these guidelines have been for Mob, and he's afraid of, he's afraid of Mob becoming a shitty person. Because if Mob, like, is able to just use his powers willy-nilly and not care about human life or whatever, he becomes a shitty person, and he doesn't want that from Mob. He sees the good kid that's there, and he wants him to stay a good kid. He doesn't want him to become a monster, because, like, the people in front of him are monsters. He even says it himself, like, because Regan's, like, usually able to talk his way around stuff, but he's like, no, I can't with these people. He's like, but that's only because I'm able to, like, I'm always able to win an argument against adults. These are basically, in his mind, is like, these are stunted kids. These aren't adults. These are kids who kind of grow up and never stop being kids. Like, who they were as kids have been, like, it's kind of like they're I don't know if Peter Pan syndrome would be the right word, but like, they're stuck at who they were and their thought process and their perspective on things. And it's like, you're not having conversations with regular adults. These are just kind of kids who grew up and just stayed kids to some extent, with their circumstances being what they are. And Regan can't really rationally talk to them in any capacity. So I think that was kind of my understanding, but I, like, once again, depending on what perspective you want to have on Regan, you could look at it as like, oh, once again, is he trying to keep Mob placated and just docile for his own benefit? Because I need you, like, if you, like, grow up too quickly and, like, like, you won't need me anymore. You'll leave me, and you're kind of my cash cow. So once again, that's a very pessimistic view on it, but I do believe it might just be, no, I don't want you to be an asshole. I don't want you to be comfortable. It's kind of like someone who's like, right, you never want to get comfortable with killing. Like, if, there's a self-defense situation, sure, but it's like, if you ever got too comfortable with it, that's when you start losing your empathy, and I think he's worried about that with Mob. Like, I don't want Mob, who already bottles up his emotions, and there's reasons for that, to kind of control his powers, and a kid who's always lived in fear of that. So being able to kind of run rampant with your powers and caring less and less about people, that's not something he wants from Mob. So I guess that's my understanding and reasoning. Maybe next episode will give us even more clarity on that. But yeah, like I said, there's only so far Regan's lying could take him, and it just didn't work for him this episode. I love the drop kick. Once again, his special move where he like drop kicks an Esper, or his hypnosis punch where he pretends like he's hypnotizing someone and just randomly punches them. I just love that. But yeah, the people he's up against are other Espers. This is the first time, because he never knew about, for one, he didn't know about Risu getting powers. He also didn't know about Mob and Taruki's fight, so if he did, he would know about there being other Espers, and now he's like, oh my god, this organization, there are other Espers besides Mob, and now that's a reality kind of sinking in. So he's trying to say, like, we should run away, and he convinced the lackeys to run away, and they did. They're like, oh my god, you're giving us a second chance, you're giving us an opportunity, we'll leave, and they ultimately run away. And just before he's able to, the ceiling comes collapsing down, so he's not able to run away. So they're kind of stuck in this fight. Sakurai, who's able to use his sword, which isn't actually a sharp sword, it's a toy sword that he's like, basically, I've cursed it, and over the years, it's gotten stronger. Like, it's a toy sword that cuts like an actual blade, which we can actually see like cuts through anything now. I wonder what his his main power is telekinesis, but he did something for it to become real. I don't know what he was saying. He did something and cursed it for so long that it now, after all these years, has become so sharp, even though it is a toy sword. And I guess it's almost like, maybe there's like a psychic projection of like believing it to be, putting all your psychic energy into this blade until you made it into, like, I don't know if that's supposed to be like some kind of reality altering aspect to his psychic abilities, of he made it into an extremely sharp blade to cut through anything, or what. The other guy can like create versions of himself from his body. Like, he'll leave his body and like create like these kind of illusions from himself. And then there's the monster, there's the evil spirit dude, who his immediately get exorcised, but then he brings out the biggest one, which we have not found out whatever happened to Dimple. We know he was basically served up on a silver platter to them last episode, but we don't know beyond that, like, whether he's still trapped in, I'm assuming he's like either managed to negotiate his way out of getting eaten, or he's managed to fight his way out. I don't know, but he's still locked into that container that holds all the I think it was like a jar or whatever that holds all the, or jar or vase or whatever that holds all the evil spirits he has under his control. But I love that whole sequence, especially like Taruki versus Sakurai, where he's like slicing things up, and there's like this rebar that like I loved it, where it's like he's getting flown back, and Taruki like uses it. He like telekinetically like stabs it into like the cement or whatever, and then like grabs onto it to kind of stop himself. And I was like, oh, that's so like, once that whole sequence, and just like I said, Sakurai like slicing through the buildings, like the building like that, is just insane. And like I said, you have Mob, who's torn between and conflicted because he wants to fight to protect Risu and Taruki and his master, but it's also the thing of his master being like, no, don't do that. But because in Mob's head, and once again, I think this is the point about Regan, where it's like he's telling Mob like, no, let's just run away, because Mob is like, fine, I'll do whatever it takes. I don't care if I have to murder someone. I'll do whatever it takes. And and it's like the emotion that's coming out. It's like murderous intent. And in that moment, Regan slaps his face and tells him, like, you don't have to do this. He's like, you can't. Sometimes it's okay to just run away. And like I said, it feeds into, he just doesn't want Regan doesn't want Mob to lose himself. He doesn't want Mob to become a monster in that moment. So, but Sakurai shows up and slashes him in the back. And in that moment, the episode ends with the counter hitting 100. And now it's like, what's going to happen? Like, Regan stopped the worst thing possible from happening, but you might have still sent Mob over the edge. So who knows what's going to come out, whether it's just going to still be Mob, but, you know, Mob that's all about murder. Maybe Regan got to him at the last second, so that won't come out. And so maybe he'll just hit 100%, but that won't be what ends up coming out. Or just like Taruki, his fight with Taruki, that thing that's inside of him, like whether that's him on some level, whether that's something else, which it seems heavily like it's implying that that's something else entirely. We don't know what it is, but that thing or that came out, it's like that might be the worst possible thing to come out, you know, in this moment, because they recognize him as strong, but they haven't seen what's buried deep inside of Mob, and they're going to come to regret that. So we'll have to wait to see how this all shakes out. The next episode is the season finale, so I'm excited to see what happens, how this all plays out, because the title of the episode is like Mob and Regan, so I'm curious to see what that ends up entailing. Because I meant to talk about it, because like leaning into, like, you know, we saw the beginning of Mob and Regan's relationship when Mob originally went to Regan, and because Regan kind of brushed it off because he's like, okay, this kid's kind of like maybe not 100% right in the head. He's pretending, saying like, oh, he's got psychic powers, yada yada yada, and Regan just gave him advice by being like, right, all you have to do is just kind of be yourself. Your Esper powers, whatever the case may be, they don't define you. They're a part of you, but just like anything else, like someone that's muscular and their muscles being a part of it, it's just like that. It doesn't have to fully define you. It's just a part of you, and you're just as human as anyone else. And for Mob, who felt probably so isolated and alone and feeling like no one would understand him, to feel understood for the first time in his life, that meant the world to him. That's why Regan means the world to him, why he matters, and why he holds on to every word that Regan says, and why he believes him so wholeheartedly. Because when Mob felt so alone in the world in that regard, he found someone who ended up being the foundation to who he is now. He owes all that he is, and to Regan, which in Regan found out, oh my God, you really do have powers, let me take advantage of this. But there was like a single line where Regan was like, I know what it's like to be a kid who kind of no one understands, or something like that, and he quickly moved on. But I guess when he sees Mob, he saw a lot of who he was, and that's why I'm curious about why he's trying to tell Mob just to run away, because maybe it's a thing of Regan had to run away. Like, either he didn't choose to run away and that caused more problems, and he doesn't want Mob to go down that route, or maybe he's always lived his life running away, so that's why it's easier for him to tell Mob, like, yo, when shit gets bad, it's okay to run away. You don't have to stand and fight. Like, it could be either or, and I'd love to get more context on that potentially in the next episode. Like I said, I do know there is this kind of like 1 hour thing that comes out. I don't know if it's going to mainly focus on Regan. It might, but there's like a 1 hour kind of special thing that I see that it's on Crunchyroll as like in between season 1 and season 2. So I'm curious to see what that's about and what that entails, and maybe the season 1 finale will give me a little more insight potentially in what that is. It feels like that's kind of its own thing. I don't know if it's like a canon thing. I'd assume it is, but that's kind of neither here nor there. Like I said, I'm very, very excited to ultimately see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the season finale. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.